This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. I've got a very special guest joining us today, and I first met my guest on an office hours event that I was co-hosting with David Meltzer. We do a series of office hours. We're 730 of them now, I think, something like that. A lot of conversations. But the problem with the office hours show is it's a short form interview, and I stumble onto some guests sometimes that 10 and 15 minute just doesn't cut it. I just, we open the cover on something and go, oh my God, there's a treasure chest in here, and I don't have time to explore it. So Judy Wilkins-Smith is one of those guests that I just, I was so frustrated that I couldn't have a conversation that would take me and take my guests, my audience, into places that they oftentimes don't have an opportunity to go. And her history, we were talking just prior to going live here, is just fascinating in the work that she's done. And I'm going to specifically focus on, what's called constellation work. And, a lot of my work in organizations is around just, the awareness of systems, just, what are patterns that are in place that are oftentimes not recognized, that basically serve to trip us up in very significant ways. And Judy is truly a pioneer in this area. Family constellation work, just by way of introduction here, Virginia Satir did some of the original stuff with that. Alfred Adler actually, came up with some of the main components of it. And then Hellinger went on and took some of Satir's work and codified it in a little bit more robust fashion, more accessible in some ways. And Judy has studied, extensively in this area, and has worked with some of the most fascinating companies in the world. Chevron, Shell, Exxon, J.P. Morgan, Kraft, Mars. We can fill in all kinds of blanks here with the companies with whom she's worked, bringing this conversation about what are the unconscious, unrecognized patterns that are in place in the organization that are not serving us. They're actually serving something else that needs to actually be put to bed. So, Judy, I want to just welcome you. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks, Blaine. Me too. I think it's going to be a nice one.
So I guess let's go back to the beginning. How did you first get familiarized with constellation work, and how, because these little trails, go all over the place, and we've got some people in common, some experiences in common.
We do. We absolutely
there's a lot
do.
of overlaps. So I'd be very interested to hear your genesis story.
So it was actually super interesting. I left South Africa, and when I left South Africa, my farewell speech was given by a Zulu doctor. And I didn't know at the time that this work had its origin in the Zulu nation, had no idea.
Yeah.
So years later, I'm busy doing this work, and somebody says to me, well, of course you're going to be able to do this. And I said, why? And they said, because it started with the Zulus.
Yeah.
Had no idea. So back to the Zulu doctor, who says, you may be leaving us, but you'll find a way to represent us in the world. And I went, yeah. And maybe he knew something, because that's what I do every day. So it really happened when we moved over here. I was a med tech in 3 different areas, and my father was killed in a hospital here, and they failed him in all 3 areas, and it was the door shut.
Mm.
And so for me, it was a question of write books or go crazy. And I figured that write books was probably a better idea. And I was busy doing research for one of the books, stumbled onto somebody who was doing this work, constellations work. And they said to me, if you come study with me, I'll help you with a book. pleased to say I went and studied with said teacher and got zero help with the book. Just saying. But got into that and went, oh, wow, there's a whole dimension of something I need to understand here. And started working with people individually. And then I had some of the organizations say, well, if you could do this for people, can you do it for organizations? And of course, the answer is yes, because organizations are people. So went and studied a little bit about that, but still found myself going, okay, and then what? And then started developing emotional DNA. So
Mm-hmm.
I explained to people, you don't just inherit your physical DNA, you also inherit your emotional DNA, your patterns of thoughts, feelings, actions, inactions. In other words, everything that is in the unconscious field that is there, everything that's ever happened or perhaps not happened is there. It's yours to access. And we see this come up in the patterns that circle down to us. So for me, it's fascinating to watch either in an individual or an organization. What is the dominant pattern? When did it start? How is it affecting you? What is its purpose? People don't go to what is its purpose. Often its purpose is your purpose, and it's the purpose that you've been looking for all along.
That whole notion of, I mean, everything has a reason for existing. And there's, I can't think of a better way to describe that. I mean, life is just a composite of things that have a place. They have a place, and
Everything has a place.
everything. And to the degree that we can begin to recognize, appreciate, and honor that, I think we open up some very interesting possibilities for growth. And I'm going to just kind of mark out here. Yeah, I think everybody is ultimately successful in life. And it's impossible to live a life and not be successful. It really depends on how you define success. But that's one thing that I want to actually explore a little bit here. When we're looking at accessing emotional DNA, which a generic word that I use a lot is mindset.
Mm-hmm.
The mindset is composed of my belief systems, the value systems that I've grown up with, societal mores, but also the emotional content that is hardwired into my brain,
Right.
literally, neurologically. And in the constellation work that you do, it's all represented by patterns. Everything
It's all
everything's
represented,
patterns.
yes, by patterns and people.
Mm-hmm.
Because to your point, what you said earlier on with the mindsets is we have an event. The event creates or ignites a set of reactions. The
Yep.
reactions then are things that we make meaning of. It's not that they're one or the other, it's the meaning we make of
Meaning
them.
making.
And the meaning that we make of them becomes the mindset that then become hardwired in, and that becomes your epigenetic imprint as well. So
Yes.
you're sitting with all of this, and in a constellation, you represent those different pieces using live representatives or sometimes inanimate objects that are also frequently really helpful. But you set those up, and the minute people can see it, hear it, touch it, taste it, feel it, they start to have it's the opposite of a traumatic experience. They
Yeah.
have a transformational experience, and it's a deeply embodied aha experience that lights them up top to bottom. It's very fast, it's very effective, it's very deep, and it's lasting. And so it starts to open up a completely different dimension. I have people I will work with, and the next morning they say, I'm not able to think the same way. I can't even feel the same way. And no, because what you thought was it was not. And what you found is. And so it's all of these iterations, and I would say we constantly, if we choose, are able to upgrade and get into that purpose and take it really big. And big depends on what big is for you.
Right. And it
Yeah,
kind of goes back to, how do I define success in one
exactly.
word here? One of the ways that, in my experience, working with constellation or actually invisible patterns, in the conversation, I mean, Virginia Satir famously talked about, communication being the ways, plural, the ways that we work out common meaning with one
Right.
another. And and it's that focus on meaning that I want to just kind of hone in on here a
Yes,
little bit.
please. Yes, please, because meaning is everything. I
Right.
have people who come in and they say, I'm broken. And I look at them and go, no, you're awakening. Or they come in, and I have a lady who came in who said, the only thing I ever got from my parents was teeny tiny little drops of love. And she went on and on about this. I'm not much good, and I got only these teeny tiny drops of love. And I said, are you married? Yes. Are you happy? Yes. Children love you? Yes. I have a very happy marriage, but I want to belong in my family. But all I ever got was teeny tiny drops of love. And I said to her, hold on, tell me about your family, because in this work, of course, you always take a history. What do you know about your family? Well, they were Holocaust survivors. And I said to her, stop right there. And
Right
she
there.
said to me, why? I said to her, could they have expressed large emotion? And she said, oh no, it was dangerous. And I said to her, but they gave you teeny tiny drops of love. And look what you've done with them. She went, oh my goodness, I've never looked at it that way. So constellations is also very much about reframing what looks terrible into the remarkable, because both sit in the same pattern, and it's
Yes.
what you choose.
Yeah. And that's essentially where I wanted to land, and I'm glad that we did here. It's all about choice.
It's everything is choice.
Everything is a choice.
Everything is choice. Yeah, it really is. People don't get that. They tell me I have no choice. You have a choice.
I was doing some reading this morning. I mean, I read every morning, part of my study routine. And I was doing some reading by Neville Goddard. And, The Coin of Heaven is one of his lectures. And I'll just kind of put this here. The present moment does not recede into the past. It advances into the future to confront us, spent or invested. So that notion of being spent or invested, how do I invest this moment into something that is going to be generative, as opposed to spend it on rumination and uh,
Yeah, fritter it
woe of
away.
me and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So in the the reframing rewires the brain. It's at that moment of that epiphany. Aha!
Yes.
God, I never thought of it this way before.
Right.
Creates new neural pathways that we then can
Yes.
reinforce.
Yes.
And that's because before we started the recording here, we were talking about, okay, this is what's so now. So what? Okay.
Exactly.
So how do you actually, and I'll put this in the context of an organization, a business, and not so much a nuclear family structure, but how do that now what? What do you actually point people to as a team, as an executive group, as a organization, so that they can begin to answer in a way that's appropriate for them? The now what? What do I do with this? Aha!
Exactly. So for me, what I do is I look at what is the most possible. Now, if you looked at my website, you'll see I ask there a very specific question that people always go at me for. And it's, how big are you willing to be? Not how big are you? How big are you willing to be? And people will say to me, well, that's egotistical. And I say, no, the
Mm,
day that you agree to be big is the humblest day of your life, because it's the first time you agree to take responsibility for your life and creating the best version of that. And it's the first time you're in service of the universe. So with organizations, what I do is I look at it and I ask, what is your highest possibility? Who do you serve? Who are your customers? Where are you stuck? What is your highest possibility? And then, so in all living systems, you have these three principles: balance of give and receive, order, and belonging. So I look to see which one is out and which one wants to be amplified. And then we start the reframe.
mhm.
And I listen to the messages. I love language. I listen to people saying, nobody ever listens to me. In this organization, where is communication struggling? I'm on the clock 24/7. Your balance of give and receive is off. What do we need to do here? Um, it's hopeless. How do you need to incentivize? But all the time I'm asking, what is your greatest good? What is your greatest good? So when I work with them, I smile. I think my favorite one was my first CFO I worked with. So I walked in and he said to me, okay, I've heard that you're very good at problem solving. I don't want any of this woo-woo constellation stuff. So I said to him, okay, so tell me what the problem is. And I said to him, let's sort of write down all the parts of that problem, every single component. And then when we'd finished putting that on Post-it notes, I said to him, look, I'm very visual. Can we put those all on computer paper and just put a little arrow on it so I can see, and we'll name them all and then lie them down and you lay it out for me the way that it is for you. So he does this and we move around and I said to him, stand here and tell me what's going on. Stand here and tell me what's going on. What's this? What's that? And he looks at me and goes, I've just solved the problem. We haven't been able to solve it for 2 years. I've just solved the problem. And I said to him, great. And he looked at me and says, that was a constellation. I said, it sure was.
It sure was.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I like about that work and the way that you just described it is it involves the full body.
Very much.
You have people actually, so it's not just a didactic cognitive exercise. Yeah. Getting people to moving, kind of go over here now, give that a voice. What's the voice? What wants to be said from this position? And sometimes I've done this, what's the body posture that this site, right, this place, this, and the body knows exactly what posture to assume.
Body knows what to do.
And then you speak from that body.
Yes. And it's also head, heart, and gut. Head, heart, and gut have to be aligned. Yep. For you to move, you've got to have a state of coherence. The state of coherence is head, heart, and gut. The brain's got to tell the heart a story that the gut and the body can believe. Before that happens, you don't move.
You're frozen.
You're frozen. You lay down a neural pathway when your brain goes, and people say to me, but that's so difficult. How do we do it? And I say, you do it every single day. You go, I'm stupid. Your heart goes, oh, that's true. And your gut goes, you're very good at it. All we're saying is turn it around the other way and say, I'm really smart. I can figure this out. I know how to do this, but you've got to believe what you're telling yourself. You've got to believe that. If you don't believe it, you will not move.
And there's a piece there that's embedded that I don't think people understand fully. We're always practicing what we're doing. Practice makes habits. So when people tell me, I don't know how to do this, well, you're doing it anyway. You're just not getting the result that you say that you'd like to have, but you're practicing doing something that is a manifestation process.
Yes, all the time.
All the time, we're continuously manifesting.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that because I keep teaching people this. You are constantly manifesting. The problem is you become really good at manifesting your woes and the woes of the world. Yep. Now, if we can get you to turn that around and start manifesting the yays and the yays of the world, you're going to be in really good shape. But because we've been raised in cultures and religions and families where the overriding message is you're stupid, you're a sinner, you were born in sin, you're going to live in sin, please try to die nicely and maybe you'll get a seat over there. It's just not smart. If we can get people, oh, good Lord, if we could get people to just understand that you're it, you are your adventure, and get them to wire into that and wire their brain into what's possible, not what's gonna happen because it's terrible, what's possible. They will start to have those aha experiences, and they do. And in constellations work, you have a lot of aha experiences.
That's, my guess would be, and I haven't checked this out with you, but I'm going to just kind of go out on a limb here and make this observation. Your work is coming to you off of referrals more than I don't think you do any what we would typically call legacy type of marketing or any of that kind of stuff. It's I'm guessing it's pretty much referral based.
It's become very much word of mouth.
Yes. So what would compel somebody to say, hey, I'm going to give Judy a call? I think that there's a need here that I don't know what it is, but it feels like it. What would compel somebody to do that?
So there are a number of things. I'm going to go through the whole sort of medley. Number one is a company that wants to go to the next level. So we're going to start with companies. Number two is a company that's struggling because they know that I'm also known as a turnaround agent. I
Yep.
look at it and I can see why we're struggling and where you need to go. Okay. So those are those two. Then we would have the individual who's struggling. I have a lot of doctors who will say, look, we've tried everything. We've done all the tests. Everything's fine. You need to go and see her because it's not here, but it may be here or it may be here. And when we say here, I really want people to get off the idea that it's all in your mind. You're a dimwit. No, it's that the message is locked here and we need to decode it. That's all.
Yeah, that's
So
all.
those, and then also people who look at this work and they go, this could take me to the next level I want in. And that's the place that I think for me, I love to play. I love to work with large groups, walk in and go next level because it's so experiential that people walk out having had that aha transformation, having also stood in a space that most people never get to stand in, the knowing field, that field of unconscious. They've
Yeah.
actually got to stand in it and fully experience it. And it often knocks them off their feet. And they go home knowing, oh my goodness, there is a world around me that is far bigger than I ever imagined.
Yeah. You speak about the knowing field. It reminds me of a Rumi quote. Yeah, out beyond right
Yes,
making and wrong making, there is a field. I will meet you
I'll
there.
meet you there. I love that thing. I love that thing.
Yeah.
But yet the knowing field, and then the other reason that people will come to me is they're meditators and they've heard one of my meditations and they go, wait, I need to experience this in person. And then the skeptics, who are some of my favorite people, they walk into the room, I can see it on their face, and they're like, okay, I'm here to prove that this is a load of what's it. And they do one constellation and they go, what happened? And I love that. I love that there are dimensions and there are places that we can go to in this work that people have never been to, and they are higher dimensions.
They are
And
higher dimensions. Yeah.
yes, and it helps them to start laying down very different neural pathways, very much higher neural pathways. And when they get beyond the self-blame and the self-pity, they discover that there is one incredible life out there that you can keep delving into and you will never get tired.
And you will never come to the conclusion of it. I mean,
No, you will not. You will
no.
not.
It's fascinating in that regard. For me, the purpose of business is to uplift the experience of being alive on this planet. So, if I'm talking about possibility, if a business is organizing itself around that higher aspiration, have my service or product uplift the experience that you're having about your life today. I'm going to be having people beat a path to my door. There's no question about that.
Exactly.
And it's that question of, and it's not a question of we need a 10% increase in our revenue this year. Those incremental goals are crazy making because they do not have any spirit in them. And I'll use the
Well,
word spirit.
there are two things. They don't have any spirit in them, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting, but they also don't have any money in it. And money, by the way, is one of the things that I teach a lot about because money is a very wise, loving force that people misunderstand completely.
Yeah.
And I go into companies and they give me the whole plan and we look and I go, where's the money? Oh no, it's not about the money. And I said to them, well, then you should shut your business
Yeah.
now.
Money is energy.
Oh,
It's
money is beautiful energy.
energy in motion. It's a creative. Yeah, it's a creative energy. It's a
Yeah, I teach a
generative energy.
whole thing on money DNA.
The the problem I think that people run into is because of a scarcity mindset, and this is where some pattern work begins to come
Absolutely.
into place. So the behavior becomes one of accumulation rather than distribution. So when I'm
You
accumulating,
can accumulate. I never have a problem with that. I always tell people, please fill your own cup first.
yeah,
But after that comes exactly what you're talking about, because the very next thing you want to do is share.
yeah,
You
going back to
just
give
do.
and receive. There's that dynamic.
Absolutely.
Life works. Nature has been the greatest teacher I've ever had in my life. I grew up on a farm. I live on, I've got 11 acres here on an island.
Oh,
It's just, I mean, I'm out in nature a lot, and there is nothing in my experience that tells me that anything in nature serves solely as a center of accumulation. Everything in nature at some point in time is involved in distribution. There's a reciprocity that is always at play.
Always, always, always.
And I mean, if we're looking at generative patterns, I can't think of a better teacher than nature. And I don't know where I'm going to go with that particular statement. I know there was a question embedded in there, but
No, there is nature is generative, and what it teaches us is the balance of give and receive.
the balance,
And
that's the question that I
yeah,
have.
and
Yeah.
yes, and when you look at that, you can tell very quickly in organizations or for people, is their balance of give and receive on or off?
Mm-hmm.
Most people, by the way, do the opposite. They give too much
Yeah.
and then they destroy relationships with it because
Mm-hmm.
they get too big and they make other people too small. What you've got to do is give, receive, so that it's building all the time. And the more that you give and the more that you receive and the more that you give and the more you receive, the stronger and the bigger and the better it builds.
Yeah. See, that whole notion of being big, how big do you want to play? And there's a distinction, and you and I both came in pretty early in the personal development space in the 1970s and whatnot. That the idea of playing not to lose versus playing to win.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
I thought you might.
And often companies are doing that. They're playing not to lose
They're playing
instead of
not to
playing
lose.
to win. Yeah.
Yeah,
In
and
fact,
I
there are
can't
some very
convince.
big global ones who do that. Very big.
Yeah. Very big. And if I've got the language that I'm using today around this is for the sake of what? We talk about purpose, but for the sake of what is that purpose in place? What does it make possible? What do you get to have, do, or be that you wouldn't get to have, do, or be if this wasn't happening? If this wasn't going
Exactly.
to be realized?
Exactly.
That invites expansion.
It really does. Yeah, it really does. It looks at, but it also invites, and I don't like I don't like the word healing because I don't think we're broken to begin with. So
Right.
that frustrates me. But when there have been fractures in relationships or there have been difficult relationships, sometimes it needed a difficult relationship in order for the person to be able to individuate, in order for the person to be able to see a different pattern, in order for them to walk a different path. And we forget all the time to look at, why did that happen? What did it give me? We really forget that there is, in every train smash, there is a gift.
Everyone. Absolutely. Now, speaking about gifts, DNA, I mean, epigenetically, we've inherited a lot, or it shows up epigenetically, emotions, belief systems, all this kind of stuff. You've got something coming up at Disney World, October 9 through 12. That speaks to this phenomena of embodied DNA that gets expressed in my life. You want to talk a little bit about that because this is going to be a very interesting experience for folks. I got a hunch.
Yes. So here's the deal. Often in systemic work, we bring people into seeing what the pattern is that's kept them stuck. So that once they can see what's kept them stuck, they're free to go and do something else. And then what?
And then what?
And then what, as I've said, is where I like to play. So I've designed a 4-day event where they will get 1 day to look at that, where I'm stuck and what it does. And after then, you get to put that down. We're not doing that anymore. You put it down. So they go through a process of putting that down. And for the next 3 days, it's, and then what? So what can I do with this? How can I move with this? How do I move things through barriers and become unstoppable? Because in constellation work, the one thing that I think we don't focus on enough when we're working with people is teaching people that for as long as you do systemic work in constellations, you are unstoppable. You will always be in the process of figuring it out and evolving, figuring it out and evolving. It's when you stop doing that you become stoppable. So for 4 days, it's moving you all the way through that and showing you how to stay unstoppable.
I love
And
that.
it's called Breakthrough DNA.
Breakthrough DNA. And people can find out about it on your website.
Absolutely.
And that website, please. What's
Is
the
Judy
URL?
Wilkins-Smith.com. Yeah, they can find out about it there. It should be on LinkedIn. They probably will find it on Facebook. Yeah.
Great. And I'll be sure that we've got that in the show notes because this will air, prior to the October date. So we'll do a little promotional scheduling here with you on that so that
I
it's
would
coming up.
love that. And I would
Yeah.
also say, Blaine, I would also say to people, a lot of people come to me and they've got this book. In fact, they teach my first book in Peru. They run courses off my first book. It's super helpful for people who don't understand or know systemic work and constellations. It's called Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint. And they come in and they say, what does this mean? What does this mean? What do you mean by this? So yeah, a really super helpful guide to systemic work and constellations.
I love it. Judy, we're out of time, unfortunately, here. I can keep this conversation going. Again, not nearly enough time. Folks have been listening to Judy Wilkins-Smith. Check out her website, judywilkins-smith.com. And I've been on the site. There's a lot of material there that is very accessible. And you can find out more about her, obviously, there. But I do want to encourage you to take advantage of the October program. I think that it's going to be quite, as a matter of fact, I'm looking at my calendar right now just to see where I'm at. So we'll see what we can make happen with that. Judy, thank you so much for being on the show. I greatly appreciate the conversation.
It was a great conversation. Thank you for the time.
Absolutely, Mike. My pleasure. And folks, as always, I think as I sign off here, find a way in your life to be a center of distribution, not accumulation. You're going to find that your life works a whole lot better when you're actually in that circular flow. And just give it away. Give something away. Give a hug away. Give a smile away. It doesn't have to be much, but it really makes a difference. The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. Thank you for listening. This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hi, I'd like to ask you to do something for me if you wouldn't mind. If you like this episode, I'd like you to not only subscribe on your favorite site, but I'd also like you to give a rating. Ideally, a 5-star rating would be greatly appreciated. But I think more importantly also would be just some comments. That helps with the algorithm and it helps build the audience with this. And more than anything else, if you could invite somebody else to listen, just share this episode with a friend, with a colleague. And I'd like to see how we can grow the soul of business. I think it makes a difference. Thanks.